It's the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Support for this podcast comes from Invent Together. I bet you didn't know that inventing activity by Black inventors peaked in 1899, and it has never recovered. Black and Hispanic college graduates patented half the rate of white college graduates. That's just one of the reasons why you need to know about Invent Together. When our patent system gets more diverse, our nation will get stronger and more successful. Find out how you can help diverse inventors and unleash economic opportunity at inventtogether.org.
You are Locked On Brewers, your daily Milwaukee Brewers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, and welcome back to Locked On Brewers, brought to you by the Locked On Podcast Network, where we talk about your favorite teams every day. I'm your host, Jake Mastriani. You can follow me on Twitter at ShortstopBall, and joining me once again is my co-host, Vinny Rottino, and you can follow him on Twitter at Vinny Rottino. Also, make sure you follow the podcast on Twitter at Locked On Brewers and subscribe to the Locked On Brewers podcast wherever you get your podcast. Today, we will be doing our first half recap, giving you our thoughts on the first half of the season, our Brewers awards for the first half of the season, and then we'll take a couple of questions at the end. And then on Friday's podcast, we'll be previewing the second half of the season, so make sure that you look out for that as well. Before we get into this episode, I want to remind you again about our Locked On MLB Prospects podcast, especially coming out of the draft. If you're the type of baseball fan that can't help but get giddy over prospects, then we have the podcast for you. Locked On MLB Prospects, hosted by minor league play-by-play voice Arama Layton, is the only daily podcast devoted entirely to the stars of tomorrow. Follow Locked On MLB Prospects on the Odyssey app or wherever you get your podcasts. So, Vinny, before we get into our overall thoughts on the first half of the season, I know you hadn't been able to be on the last couple of days. So I wanted to get your thoughts on the draft and on the All-Star game. Let's start with the draft first. What did you think about some of the players that the Brewers took and just the overall draft in general?
I thought the Brewers did a great job. I thought the pick of Frelick, everything that I've heard about this kid is he's a ball player, he's a winner, he's a gamer. Chance that he sticks in center field, can hit. Just checks multiple boxes. And then the kid they took in the second round to me was at the comp round.
I think it was the comp round. They took Tyler Black.
Yeah, Black. I like that pick a lot. Reminds me of just looking at some video stuff. He reminds me of shortstop for the St. Louis Cardinals. What's his name? Why am I blanking?
Paul DeYoung.
Yeah, DeYoung. You're blank. You almost blanked too, but maybe maybe you're just so surprised by the comp, by the comparison. But yeah, Paul DeYoung. I know this kid Black doesn't play shortstop, but in terms of just being an up the middle second baseman, maybe moves over to first type of player. With a bigger body and explosive bat speed, just that kind of a player. Doesn't swing and miss. One of my favorite players as a scout in the minor leagues was Sean Murphy. Came out of Wright State as well. I really like that pick. And then the other kid that I'm kind of high on, even though he seems to be without a position, was Benelis out of Louisville, local kid from around here. Went to Oak Creek High School, can really hit. Honestly, reminds me a little bit just the way that he goes about his approach at the play, a little bit of Jesse Winker in him for me, which we all know that the Brewers given the Brewers tons of fits. But yeah, and they took a bunch of upside kids day 3, which kid out of Colorado, 6'7", big dude, looks like a left-handed hitting Corey Hart. that looks like an intriguing pick. Also throws 97 off the bump. I think he was actually listed as a pitcher, but I think he's gonna be sent out as a hitter if he signs. So anyway, good. Yeah, I mean, they did a good job of mixing like the safe picks with some of the projectable kids out of high school. I think they do a nice job of blending. They clearly got a good mix going on between the scouting and then the model based picking. So I thought it was a good draft. I'm excited to see these kids play.
Yeah. Now, I'm sure you obviously been listening to my podcast all week that I've been doing. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, you've been right in line with what I was thinking. I thought they played it fairly safe in the first 10 rounds, took all college players in the first 10 rounds. But then on day 3 went with some upside high school guys that hopefully they'll be able to sign. And some people take that word safe as a bad connotation. I certainly don't think that's the case at all. But I just think that a lot of the college bats that they took in those first 10 rounds are pretty safe bets to be major league players. And I think that's very solid, especially when this draft overall was one that many people didn't think was very, top heavy, didn't have a lot of, great potential like all-star type prospects in it. So I think the Brewers did a great job of selecting some really good proven college bats and arms that could potentially move through the system quick. And then took a shot on day 3 with some high school players that hopefully they saved some money early on and be able to sign some of those guys. So I think we're kind of right in line there with how the draft went. And then the All-Star game, I touched on it briefly yesterday. Honestly, didn't get to watch a ton of the All-Star game, Benny. I know you did, but what was your overall thoughts on the All-Star game and some of the Brewers' performances there?
Well, I mean, Corbin Burns took the loss in Colorado, so that wasn't obviously good. But I mean, Corbin's stuff just wasn't really playing as it usually does. I think Colorado and the elements had something to do with that. We saw that in his start there during the regular season as well. Freddie Peralta was brilliant, 3 punch outs. Only Brewers player, I think I read, the only Brewers player to strike 3 players out in an All-Star game.
Yep.
So that was certainly cool to see. Freddie just continues to impress on many levels. He might end up being the best of the bunch of those 3 when all said and done. And then Omar looked good behind the dish. He got a hit. And what else? I just think just overall the game was fairly entertaining, even though it was fairly one-sided. American League kind of jumped out to a lead and never really relinquished it. But you can kind of feel a little bit of energy that, like, JT Realmuto's home run put him on the board, that the NL was going to climb back into it. And I found myself like really cheering for the NL like the entire time. Obviously, I know the Brewers were on the squad, and I know the game doesn't mean anything, but like, I don't know. I just found myself being totally locked into to trying to pull for the NL, even though, again, the game literally doesn't mean anything. And the only connection I have to that would be that the Brewer players would get to slap hands at the end of the game if they won. But interesting why I did that. I was really pulling for the NL. Yeah. End up not pulling it through. Liam Hendricks was definitely not remembering that he was mic'd up at the end of the game there with
I did see some of
poor
that
language. But yeah, it was entertaining. I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, I thought it was entertaining. I watched more of the home run derby. I watched the entire home run derby. I thought that was entertaining as well. I'm typically more entertained by that than the game itself, but glad to hear the game was entertaining too. Again, I didn't really get to watch that. I had some other commitments going on, but yeah, glad to see that a couple of Brewers players did well. Unfortunate outcome for Burns taking the loss there. But moving into just our first half of recap of the season, just wanted to get some overall thoughts, on the first half. Obviously, a strong first half for the Brewers. I don't think many people would have predicted them being 54-39 at this point in the season, with a 4-game lead in the NL Central. But Vinny, just quickly give me your overall thoughts on this team in the first half.
I mean, what else can you say? I mean, they literally didn't hit until like a month ago. and then the bats went quiet again at the end, and they still have a 4-game lead in a pretty good division, even though the Cubs have lost a ton of games recently. And I mean, yeah, and then the Reds obviously are a force to be reckoned with in the division. So and then obviously the Cardinals are always going to play everybody tough. But for them to have a 4-game lead is just remarkable. It's just a testament to the pitching staff and the ability to win close games. And then you can't say enough about Willy Adames. The fact that he's come aboard, and Brewers have the best record in baseball since he's come aboard to the team. And I don't know. I just think like there's enough offense for them to with their pitching staff to finish the season here. I know there's 2.5 months left in first place, and the Reds do scare me, like we talked about, but I think there's enough there. I do think, and we've talked about this, they're going to have to make some sort of move at the trade deadline. I do expect them to do that, actually. Sometimes, and the reason why I do is because I think there's enough teams, when all said and done, they're gonna make a move in terms of they're gonna say yes to a deal. I think there's enough teams out there that are gonna say yes to a deal for some prospects. I don't know which prospects are gonna be, but anyway, I just think that I just have a feeling there's gonna be a deal on the horizon for the Brewers. So I'm excited about the second half. But yeah, to recap the first half, I'm surprised pleasantly a little bit, but also I think there's enough here to be sitting in first place now and the rest of the season.
Yeah, I think it's kind of a bit of a roller coaster of the first half. I mean, definitely more up than down. But if you look at it, the Brewers came out on fire, really hot the first month of the season, and then were really bad for a stretch there. But then the Willy Adames trade, like you talked about, that sent them back on an uptick, and they've really just been going up ever since then, really just right up until the All-Star break when they lost 3 in a row to the Reds. So really entertaining. I mean, fun first half. Again, you talked about where the droughts that the offense have had. It's kind of crazy to think they're sitting here with 54 wins and up 4 games in the NL Central. So definitely will take that. Vinny, real quickly, do you know what your favorite moment of the first half was, other than the Adames trade?
Favorite moment? Man, you're gonna put me on the spot just like that. Let me just give me yours, and then I'll think about it.
All right. So mine's gonna kind of be an easy one. It's opening day. Everything that goes into opening day, it's my favorite day of the year. And then the Brewers to have, a comeback walk-off win against the Twins on opening day. I was on the what's now the Green Room app, listening and watching with a lot of our listeners. So that was a lot of fun, very memorable moment for me. So opening day, not really going out on a limb there, but first game of the year was a very exciting one and my most memorable one so far.
So my most memorable moment was when the Brewers swept the Cubs at AmFam Field and they flew that beautiful blue flag. And I just love that flag. I think it's so simple yet so clever. I mean, just a huge L in to kind of just shove a big middle finger into the Cubs fans' face when they fly the big W at Miller Park. So AmFam Field. So that's my most memorable moment.
Yeah, should have known you'd go there with the big L flag. All right, we'll take a break and come back and give you our first half awards.
Today's episode is brought to you in part by Fully Loaded Chew. Fully Loaded Chew is tobacco-free, long cut, and pouches that give you the same pack, dip, spit, and buzz you're used to without tobacco. Available in 9 flavors, Fully Loaded Chew is made with all food-grade ingredients and tobacco-free nicotine, the purest form of nicotine available. Maybe you or a friend or a family member uses chew right now. Guess what? Transitioning to fully loaded chew is easy. It tastes and feels just like traditional smokeless products, which makes an easy transition away from traditional tobacco smokeless products. Fully loaded chew is offering Locked On Brewers listeners a special offer right now. You could try a can for just $1. $1! That's incredible. Go to fullyloadedchew.com. Use the promo code LOCKEDON, LOCKEDON, all one word. Just $1 and free shipping if you use the code LOCKEDON at checkout. The next time you go for a dip, make it Fully Loaded Chew at fullyloadedchew.com.
This episode is also brought to you by our friends at rockauto.com. There are so many different makes and models of automobiles these days. It's impossible to stock all the parts your car will ever need in your traditional chain store. So I worry with the hassle of answering a bunch of questions and just hoping that they have the car or the part that you need. When you have the inventory of rockauto.com right there in your pocket, you can pull them up on your cell phone, find any make and model of any kind of auto parts that you need. And there are so many different reasons to maintain your automobile these days. Obviously, the biggest one is to save money. So why would you choose to spend 30, 50, sometimes even 100% more for the exact same auto part at a chain store or new car dealership? Just head on over to rockauto.com right there on your phone. Search the parts you need, buy them, have them shipped to you, and just sit back and wait for them to arrive. Again, go to rockauto.com. See all the parts available for your vehicle, and do us a favor, write Locked On in their How Did You Hear About Us box so they know that we sent you. Amazing selection, reliably low prices, and all the parts your car will ever need at rockauto.com. So, Benny, let's go through our first half awards here. And let's just start with the top, and that is the first half MVP. So I'm going to go first on this one. My first half MVP for the Brewers is Avisail Garcia. He has been one of the mainstays in the lineup all year for this team. He's played in 81 games, which I think is the most, or if not close to the most games played. And he's been banged up at times too, and he's been able to play through that when this team really needed him. 16 home runs, 55 runs batted in, 256 average. I mean, he's really been solid all year. He's come up with some big hits in the middle of that lineup. So, Vinny, my first half MVP for the Brewers is Avisail Garcia.
And we're doing the pitching MVP,
yeah, separate,
right?
yep.
To the Cy Young. Okay. Yeah, no, it's a good pick. I can see where you're going there with the consistency, with the ability to drive in runs, obviously with Christian Yelich mostly out. So I can see where you're going with that, but I got to go Omar. This was a guy that I totally didn't believe in going into the season. I talked to Nestor Corredor about this. He completely revamped his approach to how he kind of approaches the defensive side of his game, where he understood and understands now that he is a new leader, a new person really on this team in terms of leadership and guiding the pitching staff through a game, as opposed to, I mean, I played with this guy. He was a fine defensive player in terms of receiving, blocking and throwing, just the physical skills, but on the mental side of the game, it's not that he lacked the mental side. He just lacked that, and a lot of catchers lack that ability to see himself as that staff leader. He now sees himself as that staff leader, and they see him as the staff leader, which is really a cool evolution to witness when we look at Omar Narvaez. And so that's first and foremost for me of why he is the team MVP. The second, obviously, is how consistent he's been with the bat. I mean, he has been tremendous in terms of his ability to make an adjustment to his swing last year. Did a little breakdown on the show on, what was that, Sunday? And on the pregame show, I'm sorry. And it was glaringly uphill. Like, he would lose the barrel early in the swing last year and go straight uphill. And then, obviously, Andy Haynes flew down to Miami and helped him out, and he was so much more direct to the ball, so much more ability to cover both sides of the plate, hit the ball where it's pitched. And it's just a breath of fresh air on this team and in this game, really, in general, of, kind of taking an old school approach, hitting it where it's pitched, using the opposite field. He's just been so consistent. I mean, the dude has an 865 OPS. That's really, really good. On base percentage of 396, which is really impressive. Can drive the ball out of the ballpark. I mean, he's playing the premium position and doing it well. So he's my MVP. And that's what I'm going with.
Yep, no, certainly a great pick. He was the other one I was considering too, as well with Willy Adames. I considered Willy Adames is, when you talk about the most valuable player, I mean, this team took off after that trade, and a lot of people have pointed at his energy as a big reason for that. So I think he's definitely in that consideration. So it'll be interesting to see who it is at the end of the year. We'll move to our first half Cy Young, and I'll let you go first on this one. Who is your first half Cy Young winner for the Brewers?
I got to go with Woodruff. As much as I want to go Freddie, and as impressive as Corbin has been, especially early on, I got to go Woodruff. He's been so unbelievably consistent. I mean, the guy just continues just to put up quality start after quality start, and it's even better than that. Quality start doesn't do his starts justice. He's been so consistent with like dominant starts for so many in a row. He had like 12 poor pitches in New York, but that was it. Take away opening day, and then those 12 pitches in the 6th inning in New York, and he's been totally lights out. If the season ended today, he would set a record for WHIP, but he would actually not win that. He would not actually have the record if the season ended today. It would be Jacob deGrom that it would shatter the record, set by Pedro Martinez back in 2000 something, early 2000s. Pedro Martinez has the record of like a .73 WHIP. I think Woodruff at this point is like .78 actually after that last start in New York. But anyway, he's been phenomenal is the point. And he's my Cy Young.
Yep. Now that's who I would have picked as well. What's crazy is when I was looking at this, Freddie Peralta has been the second best starting pitcher on this team. And I think a lot of people will just assume that it's been Corbin Burns. Looking at the numbers, and numbers don't always tell the whole story, but I mean, Freddie Peralta, 18 games, 17 starts, 1 complete game, 98 innings, 135 strikeouts, 0.90 WHIP, a 131 batting average against, and 7 wins. I mean, you look at it, I mean, he may have a case for being the first half Cy Young, but yeah, I definitely, I've said it on here several times now. Brandon Woodruff's one of my favorite starting pitchers in all of baseball. He's definitely my first half Cy Young, but Freddie Peralta's right there with him. So a really tight race there. Again, I think just like with the first half MVP, I think he got 3 guys in consideration. And I think he got 3 obviously for the Cy Young as well. So we'll see how that plays out the rest of the way. Going to the rookie of the year for the Brewers in the first half, there's really not a ton to choose from here. Honestly, JP Fireeisen may be the first half rookie of the year, but they traded him away. So I don't know if we can technically pick him, but I'm going to go with another reliever who's stepped up here lately in Jake Cousins. 9 1/3 innings, 1 hit allowed, 3 walks. I believe that it may have all came in the same game. I'm not sure. I know he loaded the bases there at one point. But 14 strikeouts, 0.00 ERA, 0.43 WHIP. Cousins has been huge and much needed in the bullpen, stepping up there, and we'll see if he gets some high leverage situations going forward. What do you got?
I mean, I think you're probably spot on with that Jake Cousins call. I don't think there's really any other options.
Yeah.
Unless Eric Lauer's considered. No. Sorry. That was, he's been with San Diego for a number of years. I was trying to think. Cousins, and then the other option probably would be Miggy Sanchez, who's kind of in a similar role as Cousins, but has not been as dominant as Cousins. Totally dominant. There just hasn't been a ton of rookies that have made their debut for the Brewers this year. So I'm with you on that. I'm definitely going to go with Jake Cousins.
Yeah. Could be Aaron Ashby in the second half. What do you think about that?
Could be Aaron Ashby, could be Mario Feliciano, but I think that's next year. or the year after, depending on what they do with Omar, extend them or whatever. I don't know, but Ashby, yeah, I can't wait for him to solidify a role in the rotation.
So again, Brewers done all this really without any, contributions from rookies or anything. We'll see if they get some of that in the second half. Tyrone Taylor technically is still a rookie, even though it's his third year in the big leagues. And he's been good at times as well. 7 home runs, 24 RBI, 5 stolen bases. So, he kind of fits that bill as well. Really would be the only other guy other than Cousins or Sanchez, like Benny mentioned. And now the final award, and this is one that's really intriguing to me because I think the Brewers have gotten a lot of contributions from players you really wouldn't expect all good teams do in a good season. So Vinny, I'm going to let you go first on this one. Who has been your unsung hero for the Brewers in the first half? It's that guy that's kind of stepped up that you didn't expect.
Oh boy. You go multiple directions with this one. Man, oh man, unsung hero. I mean, easy place to go for me is Jace Peterson. He's just been his last 20 games, his numbers are actually quite ridiculous. It's like top 15, top 12 in the league in OPS. So I mean, the guy does it all. He's a ball player. He plays defense, multiple positions, plays a really solid second base. He can go out to the outfield and play really solid outfield. He's an athlete. He can run the bases really well, smart, instinctual. And the main thing he does is he just doesn't strike out, and he can handle, he understands what a strike looks like and what a ball looks like. So, I mean, gets on base like crazy, does a great job of passing that baton. And then he'll leave the yard on you if you make a mistake on him too. So, I mean, this isn't a slouch. This isn't just a slap hitter. This guy can leave the yard. And it's, again, I'm going to sing Andy Haynes' praises. He made some adjustments with him, got him using his lower half a little bit more, getting in the ground a little bit more, got him synced up, and he's been able to drive some balls to the gaps and out of the ballpark. So maybe they tapped into something here. He is getting pitched a little bit tougher at this point, but more power to them, because he's making them come into the zone. He's still taking his walks. I think we're going to see kind of a staple within the Brewers lineup in Jace Peterson, just because he gives that balance. He solidifies some reliability on the defensive side wherever you put him, and then he's just a hard-nosed, gritty grinder type with a ton of ability at the end of the day. So unsung hero, Jace Peterson.
Yeah, he was one of the 2 names that I had written down. The other one, and actually who I was going to pick, was Eric Lauer. When you think about where he was in spring training and just how awful he looked, and I know spring training is what it is, but I mean, he looked terrible. To be able to come back from that, and he's had some really big starts for the Brewers this year. I mean, I never would have imagined that he would make 9 starts for this team after the way he looked in spring training, but he's pitched in 12 games total, has a 3.83 ERA, very solid 56 1/3 innings. That's really big, 56 innings there from your, 6th or 7th starter, 54 strikeouts, 1.31 whip, 3 wins. So I think Eric Lauer has been very big, especially when the Brewers have been wanting and trying to go to a 6-man rotation at times, to be able, again, like I said, to have your 6th or 7th starter, come in and be able to give you, quality outings, I think has been very huge for this team. So I think Lauer is definitely one of those unsung heroes. But again, the other one I had written down too is Jace Peterson. I think that's a very good call as well. Take another break, and then we'll come back and take one of your questions from Twitter and give you a couple of news items before we get out of here. BetOnline.ag is the fastest and easiest way to bet on all your sports action. And right now you got the NBA Finals going on with your Milwaukee Bucks. You also got Major League Baseball season about to kick off the second half. But BetOnline.ag does more than that. They also cover awards, TV shows, and reality TV. They have real-time updated odds and props on almost anything that you can imagine. BetOnline had you covered for all the news, scores, and odds. It's the best way to place your bets, and it's free to sign up. Head on over to betonline.ag on your phone or internet browser and sign up today to receive your 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit using the promo code LOCKEDON. BetOnline, your online sportsbook experts.
This episode is brought to you by HP Instant Ink. No one is reading your mind, but HP Instant Ink knows when your printer is running low and sends you new cartridges, so you never have to think about ink. Save up to 50%. You'll pay less than $5 a month for ink and never run out again. Find out if your printer is eligible and enroll today at hpinstantink.com. Conditions apply. For details, visit hp.com/instantink Spotify.
So only got time for one question today, and the others I really wanted to get to tomorrow anyway, because we're going to talk more about trades on Friday's podcast. But this one comes from Erica E_Summers02. Says, do we need a bat or an arm at the deadline? I feel like I change my mind on this after every game. And I certainly understand that from Erica, because it seems like, the offense will have games where they, put up some runs and maybe the bullpen, falls apart late, or, or they'll have games where, you pitch really well and the offense only gives you a couple runs. But Vinny, for me, this answer is pretty simple. If it's between a bat or an arm, I think the Brewers definitely need a bat more than they need an arm at the trade deadline. Do you agree?
Yeah, I mean, I intuitively, and just like the obvious answer is kind of what you're saying is, yeah, bat, right? Because they haven't been swinging the bats well. But you and I both know that Brewers are going to add 2 at least starting pitching options for at the deadline, just because it's not what we expect. So,
yeah. And you can never have enough pitching. I mean, to that point, you can never have too much pitching.
Right. I mean, yeah. And I don't think that would be a bad move to add a starter, to be honest. And you could do multiple things at that point. Look, I don't know. I think their starting pitching is phenomenal. It's one of the best rotations in the league. I think Eric Lauer, to your point, is solidifying himself as a legit major league starter. And then you have Brett Anderson, who just crafty as can be. And then Adrian Hauser took an enormous step forward this year with that. And then we don't even have to talk about the top 3 guys. But with that said, I think, I think a bat would probably, a consistent bat. I mean, there's names like Joey Gallo out there available. Eduardo Escobar could step in and play some third base, and you'd move Luis Urias around, play matchups and stuff. I think it's going to be a move where it's like going to provide a ton of depth and a ton of options, just like the move to sign Jackie Bradley Jr. when the 3 outfielders were already solidified. I think that's probably going to be the most likely move, in my opinion. Some sort of like third baseman, first baseman, corner guy, bat. Eduardo Escobar comes to mind. Joey Gallo doesn't really fit that profile, however, because he doesn't play first base anymore, and he doesn't want to play first base, from everything that I understand. So,
and he's a Gold Glove outfielder too. So
yeah,
you kind of would hate to waste that at first base.
Yeah, and then that one's going to cost him a lot because he's one of the top bats in the league at this point. So I don't know. So I think I'm missing some names here, but yeah, to answer your question, I think bat is probably the answer.
Yeah,
directly.
I think they probably do both. I think this front office is going to be very aggressive at the trade deadline. But if you had to ask me, and I can only do one or the other, it's definitely a bat, in my opinion. Last thing before we get out of here, just a quick bit of injury news. Somebody we haven't talked about in a while, but Justin Topa began a rehab assignment over the break. He could be a big boost to his bullpen in the second half. We talked about, Ashby potentially joining the bullpen at some point, but Topa coming back, if he can be what he's been at times in the past, that could be another big addition to a bullpen, which already seems to be improving and kind of settling into roles there. That'll do it for this episode of Locked On Brewers. Be sure to follow us on Twitter at Locked On Brewers. Follow me at Shortstop Ball and follow Vinny at Vinny Rotino. Also, make sure that you subscribe to the Locked On Brewers podcast wherever you get your podcasts, and we'll talk to you next time.
You are Locked On Brewers, your daily Milwaukee Brewers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.